What happens when a person dies? Physically, their body stops working, stops moving itself through the world. Spiritually, we don't know. Many people believe, or would like to believe, that a person experiences some kind of afterlife where their soul, their subjectivity lives on after the body decays away. Even if a person's consciousness doesn't enjoy an afterlife, it's very likely that their memory will live on in the people around them, in the hearts of those whose lives they touched. They live on in pictures on walls, in stories told about them, and in the lessons they imparted that others might live by. The more someone was loved, the stronger and more persistent this post-life can be, their memory as vivid and as meaningful to their loved ones as their presence once was. Like people, ideas can die too. What happens when an idea dies? Disco Elysium takes place in Martinez, a shambling corpse of a district located in the city of Revachol, a city at one time known as the capital of the world. Now the crater left behind when a nascent communist revolution was ground down under the boot heel of liberal democracy. All around Martinez, you can see the scars left behind by bullets and artillery shells on the buildings, on the streets, even on the bodies. You play as Harry Dubois, a burnout police detective sent to investigate a murder. Unfortunately, you gain control of Harry the morning after the bender to end all benders. You have no memory of the case or of anything else. Thus, the game is about piecing together both the clues of the crime you came to investigate, as well as the reason you did enough drugs to erase your brain and nearly kill yourself. The world of Revachol is complex and often unpleasant, and there are several reasons why Harry seems to want out, but you soon discover that one of the main causes for Harry's erratic behavior is the collapse of his relationship to Dora Ingerland, a one-time fiancée. Though Harry is the very definition of an unreliable narrator, their relationship appears to have lasted at least a decade before she left the country. In the game, Harry's reconstructed memory of Dora becomes intertwined with the image of Dolores Day, a ruler from the distant past who was treated as some sort of semi-divine Virgin Mary type figure. 300 years later, she is worshipped by some as humanity's perfect mother, something more than human. In the same way that centuries have brushed away the mundane traits of Dolores Day, the 6 years Harry has spent mourning the breakup have turned Dora into something of a mythical figure herself. Any flaws she may have had have faded away, leaving behind a pure, ideal partner. Even worse, the conditions that led to the breakup are completely forgotten. It's as if she just floated away one day. Harry still believes there's a chance they could patch things up. Harry still believes that the relationship is alive. One of the main questions the game asks you to work out is this: how can Harry go on living without Dora? How will he respond to the realization that she's really gone, that it's really over? What does life look like for the Harry Dubois who finally understands that he is alone? Disco Elysium takes place in Martinez, the living tombstone marking the place where communism, in this part of the world, was eventually laid to rest. For about 6 years, the revolution was alive, was winning. All those books of theory were coming true. The workers were taking back power. The people could see a better world on the horizon. Then the bombs started falling on the workers, on their houses, on their families. When the dust settled, 40 million had died in the conflict. The communists and anarchists had been wiped from the face of the continent, and the city of Revachol had become the property of the coalition that had just indiscriminately bombed it into oblivion. It might not surprise you to learn that the coalition's stewardship has not quite ushered in an era of peace and prosperity to the city. In the current day in-game, communism is considered essentially dead and buried. Sure, there are nominally socialist enterprises like the Dock Workers Union still in play, but it doesn't seem like they have their sights set much higher than their own little piece of Martinez. The union boss appears content to play little political games within the status quo for the good of his people and his own wallet. Most other characters don't seem to dream of anything beyond a slightly less exploitative social democracy, a far cry from the armed rebellion that toppled a monarchy. That said, if you look carefully, you'll see that Martinez is carrying the memory of revolution deep in its heart. Here and there, you might see Mazov's spirit lurking in an apartment or an old military bunker. Play your cards right and you just might meet the last two communists in town, two students who argued about theory so much they chased away anyone else who might be interested. Steban and Ulysses seem fixated on an ideal communist critique. They belong to a school of communism that believes if you theory hard enough, you can think political realities into being. Again, a far cry from the theorists they studied who picked up rifles 50 years prior. As I travel through Martinez, I see a neighborhood caught in the chokehold of an undead history. Men loyal to the old monarchy still wear their uniforms and reminisce about the world that could have been had the communists never rebelled. Students argue the merits of this or that branch of communism and whether any of them could have prevailed. Executives profiting from the status quo they were gifted by a neoliberal army speak as if they've arrived at the end of history. Most working folks live under a haze of capitalist realism, their horizon of the thinkable now nasty, brutish, and short. One of the main questions the game asks you to work out is this: how can Revachol go on living? How can people clinging to the world that might have been respond to the realization that it will never be? What does life look like for a Martinez that accepts the ashes of its past? But I want to talk about a different question. Why is the game called Disco Elysium? Where does that phrase come from? In the world of the game, disco was a musical style that came into being during a brief time of economic opulence in Revachol called the New, a time when it seemed like everything was actually going to work out. Harry became obsessed with disco around the same time he began dating Dora, and around the same time he became a cop. The New did not last. But, surprise, surprise, Harry never gave up his love for the music genre that defined that era. Elysium, on the other hand, is a location in the afterlife as told by Greek mythology. Specifically, it is a place where people who were blessed by the gods or who were considered heroic could enjoy a happy existence after death, continuing to work the exact same profession they did in life, exactly as they always had. So what then is Disco Elysium? To answer that, let's return to the other question I left dangling earlier. What happens when an idea dies? Ideas, like people, can be important. Ideas, like people, can be loved. And like people, when ideas die, they enjoy a sort of afterlife in the memory of the people who they impacted, who they changed. In Revachol, communist revolution is an idea that died, along with most of its admirers. Before that, the golden age of Revachol's monarchy was an idea that died bleeding from rebellion. And yet, the revolution, the monarchy, these ideas are enjoying an afterlife when you arrive in Martinez. They live on in the hearts of the people to whom they were important. But this afterlife has a catch. In order to live forever, these ideas have had to shed their material reality, their flaws, their failures, their excesses and shortcomings. Monarchists won't acknowledge that it was cocaine and not communism that destroyed the kingdom. Communists won't admit that millions were killed by revolutionaries too, and that they simply were not organized, effective, or persuasive enough to repel the forces of capital. A relationship is an idea too. And Harry's relationship with Dora died. And yet, that relationship is enjoying an afterlife in Harry's mind, an existence in which Harry no longer remembers anything but how good it felt, no longer remembers why it couldn't survive. This afterlife is Disco Elysium, A place where your cherished memory of an idea becomes more real than the idea itself ever was. A place where everything that you loved about it is perfectly preserved. And it's a place you can never set foot in. You can only look from afar, because to try to touch an idea in Disco Elysium is to expose it for what it is. A happy lie you carry with you for comfort, for strength, for motivation, for direction, for identity. And this is not a moral failing. We all carry these happy lies. We all populate our own Disco Elysium with the blessed or heroic ideas that made us who we are. It's the human condition, but one of the main questions the game asks you to work out is this. How will you go on living when something you love dies? Will you preserve it in Disco Elysium and yearn to have it back as it once was? Will it enjoy an afterlife as the standard by which you judge the present day? Will you always look backwards and wonder what might have gone differently? Or will you take the lessons you learned? Will you take the person you've become and build something new, something beautiful? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you think I was going to talk about cop shit in this one?